Welcome to Rock City Cookies, where we talk about all things cookies. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button and click the bell icon to be notified when we upload a new video. Thanks for watching. Hey sweet friends, welcome back to a new tutorial video. This video is all about a first Beeday birthday themed set. So this video is going to be a little bit different than a lot of my other tutorial videos. When I first started my channel, I actually showed my face during my tutorial videos. However, it was so much easier to just do a voiceover that I thought I would switch to that. But I decided I wanted to try to do a tutorial with me actually talking to you, where you can see my face and see if that helps, because my videos where I am in them talking and people can see my expressions and they can see my eye contact are actually the best videos that are doing well on my channel. So I wanted to give it another shot and just see what I thought, what you guys thought, if you like it better or not. The only thing is I'm going to be watching my computer while I'm actually decorating the cookies and talking to you guys. So you're gonna see me looking down a lot. Just know I'm just looking at where I am in the video so that I can match that up with what I'm talking to you guys about. Okay, so here I go. I'm gonna go small into the corner of your screen and let's talk about this birthday set. Now, this set was actually done on all hexagons. So I had one cookie cutter and I did all of the designs on that one cookie cutter. Because this is a bee set, I thought the hexagon design would mimic a hive, and so I just went with it. I have very rarely ever done just one cookie cutter for an entire set, but in this one, obviously I did. Before we talk about the actual 6 designs I made in this set, let's talk about these bee transfers that I did. Now, in order to do royal icing transfers, you have to actually pipe your royal icing onto a backing of some sort. I now use acetate, and I'll link that in the description box below. But when I first began doing transfers, I just took up my cellophane packaging that I used to package up my cookies. I just took that cellophane and I cut it into pieces, and I actually did these bees on that cellophane. So you're more than welcome to use anything that you have that's like that, that's food safe. Again, I prefer acetate. It's much easier to work with and you can reuse it over and over again, and I'll link it in the description box below. But here I'm just doing small bees with royal icing onto my cellophane packaging so that it'll dry, and then you can just peel off the back, and then you can attach those transfers to your cookies later. Now, I made a ton of bees, but you just see me make 5 here, but I did make a ton for this set because all of the bees are going to go on to pretty much all of the designs. So you're going to need a lot of bees for this theme. Moving on, let's get into the very first cookie design, which is a #1 cookie. This was the child's first birthday, and so I did a #1 on top of a hexagon. As always, you are going to outline your cookie first. This prevents your royal icing from spilling over the edge. So I do pipe all of my edges first with a thicker consistency icing. Now, this is the exact same consistency that I use for detail work on top of the cookie, so I don't have many bags of icing. I tend to only have 2 bags of icing, a thick bag of icing and a flood bag of icing, and occasionally I will have a medium consistency icing. So this is a thick icing that you just outline your cookie with, and then you go back and flood it with your flood consistency. If you are interested in learning about how I make my icing, I have a royal icing series that I'm currently doing on my Patreon page, where you can see 3 different videos so far. I have a 4th one coming out in about a week and a half where I just talk about royal icing. So definitely go and check that out. Now, when you have a little bit of a thicker flood icing, you may have to help it out and pull your icing with your scribe tool to the edges. So that's what I'm doing here, is I am just making sure that my royal icing gets all the way to the edge. I didn't want to get too close to the edge because I was afraid of it spilling over and then I would have, you know, a big mess to clean up. And so I tend to be on the cautious side of things and I don't overfill my cookie, and then instead I use my scribe tool to pull the icing to the edges of the cookie. All right, now you see me using a hexagon design on top of a hexagon. And I created all of these graphics on Procreate, which is an app that is on the iPad. You can use Adobe Illustrator if you have that, but I tend to use Procreate. It's the one that's easiest for me to use. I use an Apple Pencil and I use that app to create all of my designs before I actually make my cookies. I will at some point in time have a video that I put out that explains how I use Procreate, but for now, if you want to access this graphic specifically, it will be on my Patreon page. Also, if you are a Patreon member, I am happy to actually, with my own font and my own design, change the name of whatever the birthday child is that you need fixed on this, and I can do that and send it to you so that you have the graphic that matches the font that goes with the rest of the set in the birthday child's name. So that's a benefit for Patreon only, but if you are a Patreon member and you do want to use this set and this design, just reach out to me, tell me the child's name that you need, and I will send you a new graphic that has that on it. So with my thick icing, I am just outlining the little hexagon pattern that I created in Procreate with 3 different colors. I'm using black and yellow and white because that's the only 3 colors I'm using in this entire set. And I did go with more of an orangey yellow, more of a goldy yellow for this set because that was just my own personal preference. But I did go ahead and do this pattern here. Now you will see me do a different hexagon pattern in some later design, but this is the one I went for with this set. Now that hexagon has dried on top of the hexagon, it doesn't take very long because the icing is super thick, and so it doesn't take long at all to dry, thank goodness. So once that has dried, you will then be able to do your secondary design on top of the little hexagons. So for this cookie, I'm choosing to do a number 1, again, because the child is turning 1. I have this in my Procreate already made for me, so all I have to do is project the image that I made onto this cookie, and I am doing a bold 1 so that I can fill it in. So you are going to outline your number. If it's a different number besides 1, of course, you'll choose a different number, but you will outline that design first, and then you will go back and fill it in. Now, for some reason, my black tends to crater more than any other color I own. I have no idea why. I don't know if it's because it's a different formula, because they have to concentrate a color so much to make it deep and rich in black. I don't know, but I tend to have issues cratering with my black. So here you do see me try to help that along by putting a line down the middle, and that's just for support to try to prevent my icing from cratering. So I am going back with a thinner icing and filling on top of that thick one that I piped. But even doing that, it's not going to guarantee that you aren't going to have craters. It is just part of it. I don't know why. I can't explain it. I've done so many different techniques to try to prevent it. So just know that you might have some numbers and some detail work crater when you're doing a bulky number like this. Try to make your icing a little bit on the thicker side, because the thicker your icing is, the less likely you are to have craters. So once I have finished my little black one, I want to add one of those royal icing bees, those transfers that you saw me do at first. I want to add that to the design. So you just place a little bit of icing on the back of your bee and you place it onto your design. And I like where it looked right there. So our number 1 design on our first design in this set is done. All right, let's move on to our bee cookie. This is the second design I made in this set. And again, we have a hexagon, and so you are going to outline this and you will then flood it. This one is in our yellow, so I tried to do about half of the designs in white and half of them in yellow so that I did have some contrast, because with only using 1 cookie cutter and only using 3 colors in the entire set, I still wanted to make sure I had some interest and that it was pleasing to the eye, even though so much of the design was similar. So by doing different backgrounds, that does help with that. I never did an entire black cookie because if anybody knows black, it is not a great color for client experience. So I was already using black in this set. I did not want to give them an entire black cookie. I have done it in the past, but I wanted to avoid it here because this was a child's birthday, and we know, first of all, black stains the tongue. It can stain the teeth for a few minutes. It can stain lips for a few minutes. It's not very pleasant. Plus, it also changes, how do I put this delicately? It changes what happens after you eat your cookie the next day. It changes that as well. So the later experience, it changes colors. So I try to avoid doing solid black cookies if I can. I can't always, but I do try to avoid that. Now back to what I'm doing here. I am working on another royal icing transfer for this design. So on top of this yellow hexagon, I'm going to have a large bee. So in order to do that, I outline the body first, and then I outline the wings. And because this is thick icing, it takes just very little time to dry. So now I'm able to pretty much go back right away and add in my layers on this bee. So I'm gonna add in the yellow first, and then I'm gonna add in the white section of the wings. Make sure you use your scribe tool, get out any air bubbles. And then I'm going to let that dry for a few minutes and then come back and add more layers to our bee. So I'm gonna add the second wing, and I'm also gonna add more to our bee's body. When you're doing a royal icing transfer like this, don't do what I did and pipe on the little tiny details. So do you see the arms and the antennas? Well, they look beautiful here, but they did not survive the transfer. So as soon as I let them dry and attempted to peel off the back, because as soon as your royal icing transfer is dry, your backing will just peel right off. That's the perk of using an acetate background, or in this case I was using cellophane. But once your icing has dried, for those transfers, they just pop right off of the backing, and that's when you know it's ready. Well, when I did that, I lost most of the legs and the antennas. So finally, instead of just being frustrated, I popped off the rest of the legs and the antennas that didn't break off, and I decided I would just pipe them on the design later once I had the bee transfer put on. Now, right here, you're seeing me just add some 3 dots just to add a little bit of interest to the background, because I just have a plain yellow cookie and I'm putting a bee on top. So I wanted to add some more details because, like I've said many times before, the details is what makes you stand out as a cookier. The more detail you can put into your cookies, the higher you can charge, the more satisfied your clients will be, and honestly, just the better they look. People can tell when you add more details into your work that you love what you do and that you're good at it. So I highly recommend, when you can add details, do it. So here I'm just adding just a cute little dot background just to give my cookie some more fun and interest. Okay, so now I'm going to be adding the bee onto the cookie. You just do it with royal icing on the background. You can see how much I'm using. I'm using a thick white royal icing. You don't want too much. You don't want it to squish out of where your transfer is. So you want just enough, but you do want a thicker icing so that it kind of stays in place and acts as a glue. Now, why use a royal icing transfer instead of just piping directly onto your cookie? Sometimes I do pipe directly onto my cookie, but by using a transfer, it really does add more of like a 3D effect to your cookie, because the transfer sits up on top of your cookie more than just when you pipe it directly on top of the cookie. Now, are you welcome to pipe a bee directly onto this hexagon? 1000% yes, 100% yes. But I really, really liked how this bee and my other little tiny bees looked as royal icing transfers with this set. So if you can do a transfer, I recommend it. Now you're seeing me repipe all the legs and the antennas, but it worked out great. And honestly, I wish I would have just done that from the beginning. So I highly recommend learn from my mistake. Just do the detail work after you've attached the main bit of your royal icing transfer to your cookie. All right, so also I want you to see, you can see where my black has cratered a little bit and I had to go back in and fill it in on the bee. Sadly, like I said, it happens. So I had several areas of cratering on my bee that I had to go back and fill in. But you know what? In the grand scheme of things, I bet the client didn't even notice and it still looked really cool. All right, so our bee cookie is done and he looks like a little bitty insect just sitting on that cookie. So I was really proud of how that turned out. Okay, our next design, this is our third design, is the first Beeday cookie. We've got another white background. So this is going to be the same process that you've seen me do several times now because it's the same cookie shape. But this is a hexagon, and we do have this hexagon in our Etsy shop for cookie cutters, but you can go on Etsy and you can Google hexagon cookie cutters and you will find a ton there. Before we started making hexagon cookie cutters, Bobby's cutters was my favorite for getting just basic shapes and designs, and honest to goodness, her cookie cutters stand the test of time. They last for a really long time. So you can also choose hers. I'll link hers down below too, just so you can check out her shop. Even though we sell cookie cutters, it's not our primary mode of business, and so we don't have a ton of options on our shop, and I'm just like slowly trying to add more, but it's just not our top priority. So that being said, sometimes I really recommend checking out other cookie cutter places on Etsy because they do have, that is their primary mode of business, and they have tons and tons of options. And Bobby's Cutters is one of my most recommended places to shop. Once again, I'm going to be doing a hexagon shape on top, a pattern on top of a hexagon shape. So this pattern's a little bit different. I decided to do a hexagon shape on the top and on the bottom, and then in the middle I was going to do the phrase first Beeday. I'd played around with some groupings on my Procreate on where I wanted my colors. So I'm doing all of the yellow first, and I know because of how projector and how the camera works, you can't really see the pattern on the actual video right here, but you can see it when you're working with it. And plus I have my iPad that's being projected onto my cookie, so I can also look at my iPad if I'm having problems seeing what colors I have specifically picked for the certain areas. But I did do a random grouping of yellow, black, and white. So even though this is a white background, I still wanted to pipe white on top. And I did the same thing with the yellow background. I still piped yellow hexagons on top as well because I still thought it created a really cool effect. Because my hexagons were on the top and the bottom, I don't have to wait for this to dry this time. I can actually just go right ahead and start piping my design in the middle, which says first Beeday. And to be fun, I wanted to do a mix of print and cursive. So I did the print in a fun font and the cursive below it. So first is in my print, and then I have my script, I guess is the more proper term for that. I have my script font below. All of these graphics will be on Patreon, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. If you want access to this, head over there. It's $5 a month. You get all of my videos, past and all the ones I'll be doing in the future. Feel free to head there. And I got really lucky with my consistency with this black icing. It turned out to be perfect for writing. And that's not always the case. Sometimes I get my icing a little too thin, and then my letters aren't stiff enough and they look really, if you're doing writing, you really need a stiffer icing to make it look clean and crisp, which is definitely what you want. However, if it's too thick, then it's really hard to get the beautiful rounding of letters, especially with script writing. So definitely work on that consistency for your writing. If you don't feel like your writing looks good, just keep practicing. More than likely, if you're struggling with your writing looking good, it is because your consistency isn't correct. So definitely work on that. And I got really lucky with this black. It was great consistency. I did add my little bee royal icing transfer to that design, and it's done. Let's move on to the Oliver cookie. Now, Oliver was the name of the sweet little boy who was turning 1, and I have done a whole lot of bee-themed cookie sets in the past, and I have done a lot of them for little girls. So I have a whole different design that I do for girl birthdays for the sweetest can be the #1 birthday theme. However, when I got this for Oliver, I knew that that was a little too girly for what they were looking for, and their invitation had a lot of these hexagons on it. And so I knew I wanted to piggyback off of that and kind of flip my bee design a little bit and rethink it and put this as my design for a little boy. Now I do have a tutorial video that I will do for my bee set that I have done over and over and over again for a more girly theme. So I'm happy to put that on here, but I wanted to mention that this is a little boy, which is one of the reasons why I really wanted to focus on the hexagon shape, the geometry of that, and really kind of make this a really fun and classic timeless set for either gender. So once again, I am doing a hexagon on hexagon design. And I know you're confused because I said this is an all-over cookie, and obviously I'm projecting Sweet as Can Be onto this cookie. And let me tell you, sometimes I am so exhausted because I have so many orders and I'm doing a lot of orders in one day that I lose my mind. And so that happened with this. Even my best laid plans, I had all of my designs laid out on Procreate. All I had to do was project them and then actually do them correctly. And I get to this stage of the game where I have finished the hexagon on hexagon design. I go to project my image back onto my cookies, and because I did so many different hexagon on hexagon designs, I forgot that I really needed to line up the hexagons with the design on top. And instead, I just randomly grabbed a hexagon on hexagon design and then I just piped something on top of it. So I did that with the number 1 cookie. I did that with Sweet as Can Be cookie. I did that with Oliver. I just didn't pay attention to which hexagon on hexagon pattern I had already made to do these designs on top. So you see here that obviously this pattern was meant to be for Sweet as Can Be, but instead when I went back to do the pattern, to do the layering on top, I did the wrong thing. So here I am doing Oliver. I say all that to say that you are going to make mistakes as a cookier. It's going to happen all the time. Even when I just have designs in my head, if I haven't had time just to write them all out, which that happens as well. I don't, I mean, there are times where you just have to crank something out and you haven't had time to do the prep that you need to do. Even with that, there are times where I have designs so clearly in my head and then I go to do them and I do them differently than I had in my head, or I get distracted or I forget what I'm doing and I make mistakes. And so even though I had this design completely planned out to a T, I still got distracted and I made mistakes, but I rolled with it. And in the end, no one was wiser. If I wasn't doing a tutorial video, nobody would even known that I made mistakes. So you just have to roll with your errors. Don't give up, keep going. Sometimes you have to start a cookie all over, but more times than not, you can probably fix your mistakes. Anyway, I hope that just encourages you to know that even whenever you have everything completely planned out, you can still make mistakes, and I do that all the time. All right, so let's finish up this Oliver cookie. I am doing his name in our script, and I will find out what fonts I use and I will link them in the description box below if you want to purchase those fonts to use for your own designs. So I did leave some spaces to fill in and make more of a bold font with our script. So I'm going back and I'm filling that in with our medium consistency black icing. I'm going very slowly to make sure that I fill in the space without putting air bubbles in it, because again, those air bubbles is what makes your icing crater, and it's so frustrating. So I actually don't like doing my lettering this way very much because I get so stressed out about the craters. So this time I made sure I went really slowly, only filling in a couple letters at a time. Really, you saw me with the piping bag. I was kind of pushing the icing as I was filling it just to make sure that I had complete coverage in that spot. And then I use my scribe tool to smooth out my icing. Because this is a little bit of a thicker icing, you are going to have to use a scribe tool to smooth it out, which is perfect in my opinion for this kind of detail work. Is you need it to be as thick as you can possibly get it, but it's still smooth out. All right, so we are finishing up Oliver with the last couple of letters. Now I am going to add some more bees onto this cookie as well. I definitely really liked how those bee transfers turned out, and because they were so small and a little bit bulky, I was able to really not have to worry about the wings breaking off or anything. They weren't fragile at all, which was great. So I always kind of place it a little bit first to see how I like it, and then you'll see me putting the icing on it. Again, I had the bees placed in Procreate, so I actually knew where I wanted them on my designs, but you can definitely play with them before you attach them with the royal icing on the back. So just a little dot of white royal icing, stiff white royal icing on the back of your transfer, and then place it where you want. And then we're done with our Oliver cookie with the two little sweet little bees. And I really do want you guys to tell me what you think about having my face on the screen and if this kind of tutorial works or not. I still feel a little bit out of my comfort zone because I tend to record things over and over again when I'm doing just a voiceover. I'm able to just record sections at a time and I delete them. And so this feels a little bit different, just sitting here and just going straight through a video without doing many cuts. And so you'll have to really let me know your opinion on if you like it or not. I feel like I'm a broken record, but we are doing another white hexagon here with the thick icing and then the flood, and then using your scribe tool to spread the icing out. The scribe tool I'm using, I actually got on Etsy, and I do enjoy having the ones where cookiers or companies make that have like the beads on them, just because it gives my hand something to hold on to. However, the beads break. I don't know if I'm just too rough on them or what, but the beads end up usually falling off of my scribe tool after a couple of months of use, which is fine. They're pretty inexpensive. I could just buy a new one. But I also have found myself just gravitating towards the scribe itself without the beads on them. So I do have a whole lot of just metal scribes without the beads on them. But if you are looking for scribes that are cute and fun and they actually feel good while you're holding them, I can link some Etsy shops below that sell some scribe tools. All right, I am doing the dots pattern. So you saw me do the dots pattern on the yellow hexagon with the large bee transfer. Well, now I'm doing it on a white hexagon because if you've seen any of my other videos, you know how important I think it is to use designs more than once in a set. It really ties the theme together if you're able to duplicate a design more than once. So I wanted to make sure if I did the dot pattern on one cookie design that I repeated it again in another design so that it feels cohesive. I really think that's one of the best tricks. If you can learn how to do that, do multiple designs in a set and yet the whole set feel cohesive, I really think that elevates you as a cookier. So you can do it by doing the background the same on several cookies, by using a shape multiple times in your set, by using the colors that you choose and making sure that you rotate those colors throughout the set evenly, or even using all of the colors on one cookie or a combination of the colors all the way throughout your set. That really helps with cohesion. So I recommend finding those ways to have 4, 5, 6 designs and yet them all feel like they belong together. So one of the ways I do that is obviously by recurring designs throughout a set. So the dots is one of those ways. The hexagon pattern, the hexagon on hexagon, is obviously one of those ways. Here it's really simple to see that my colors unites the set. The royal icing transfer bees, those being on almost every single cookie, unites the set. So I hope that you understand what I'm trying to say there, but definitely cohesion elevates your cookie sets tremendously. So if you can find a way, do it. All right, this cookie is, I'm finishing up the script for the word one. We don't want to miss that it is Oliver's first birthday. I'm just doing the same thing I did in the past, that I outlined the one in my thick icing. I left some space to go back and fill in with my medium consistency icing. I'm taking my time, really making sure that I fill in those gaps without leaving air And then with my scribe tool, I'm smoothing out that icing so that it has a flawless finish. Now with this one, I did do a very simple hexagon pattern in the middle of the cookie cutter. So I did the dots and a hexagon pattern, but this one was a little bit different. I just did 3 hexagons and then I did my wording on top. Again, you don't have to wait very long to layer this kind of work because that piping work is so thin and thick, it dries really quickly. So I was able to do the one very soon after I had piped out those hexagons. Have you done a bee set before? Like I said, this is definitely one of my most requested themes. I have done a bee theme many times, and so I think it's an adorable theme. I love it. I think it's super cute, but I definitely have had this as a recurring theme often. What about you? Have you had a recurring theme that you can do within your sleep? Honestly, I have a love-hate relationship with recurring themes because one, you don't have to think about it at all. You already have all your design planned out. You just do it the same way except for changing some names or maybe some birthday numbers. And so that part of it's really nice. There's no thinking. However, I get bored really easily. And so I find myself struggling when I'm doing repeat sets to not change things up. And sometimes I do change things up if I had done a design that I just really did not like. But you have a catch-22 there because you have clients who expect in the exact set that you've done in the past, they expect that. And then when you present something different, they can either love it or hate it. And I've had great experiences, but like with them loving it. And then I've had an experience, I've actually only had one, but I had an experience where they hated it. So you just have to be careful. But I definitely have a love-hate relationship with getting the same theme over and over and over again, but I don't know that I'm ever going to get bored of bees just because they're so cute. So I did add one of our royal icing transfer bees to this cookie, and our one cookie is done. All right, our final cookie in this set is Sweet as Can Be. So I'm doing this on a white hexagon, and again, you'll see me project an incorrect background here in a minute, but I fix it in the end. I definitely love doing when I have an order that is at least 2 dozen, and I believe this, I want to say that this order was for 3 dozen, but if I have an order that's at least 2 dozen, I like to do 6 designs. Any more than that, it becomes a little bit convoluted. You have a lot more colors sometimes to do. You have a lot more work on the front end designing cookies. So 6 designs tends to be my sweet spot when I am making an order that is at least 2 dozen. Now, when it's 1 dozen, I like to do 4 designs. And I don't, honestly, it has been so long since I have done an order for just 1 dozen. That is something that I changed early on into my cookie career, where I had a 2 dozen minimum, which meant that if you ordered cookies from me, you had to order at least 2 dozen. Beyond that, you could order in half dozen increments. But I just found that it was not worth it for me to do a design, to create the design, to make the dough, to make the icing, to do the cookies for just 1 dozen. It was just so much work that it just wasn't worth it for me. And so I made a 2 dozen minimum pretty early on. But if I were to have a 1 dozen where I allowed it, I only did 4 designs. That way each design could be repeated 3 times. I like to make sure that I have designs repeat several times in a set, just because I think it makes the pictures look better. I think that it helps time-wise because you are having a design repeat multiple times, but it's not too overwhelming where you're not making the same cookie a million times, because that gets really boring. I also feel like it helps the client. They feel like if they see the same design repeating, then they feel like they're getting more out of their purchase. Plus, like for us, for instance, we have multiple children who might want 1 design. And so if you have multiple of the same design, then you're able to appease more than just 1 child. So all that to say, when I have 2 dozen orders, I do 6 designs. If I have a really large order, I do more designs. The larger the order gets, the more designs I'm willing to do, but 6 is kind of my sweet spot. So in this design, this is the last one. This is the 6th design, and this one is gonna say as sweet as can be. Again, I did the little dots on the background, and I did not do any hexagons this time, and I'm just doing my writing, which is gonna be sweet as can be. Now, To make this a little bit different than my other writing, I'm going to do the sweet and the bee in yellow. And all of my other writing that you saw on the cookies, I did it all in black. I actually did a practice cookie to see if I liked the black writing for sweet and bee and the yellow writing for as can, or if I liked it the way I'm doing it with the yellow for sweet and bee and the black as can. And I thought it popped more this way. So that's why I chose to do it this way. Because black was such a dark font, it needed to be the smaller font. When the yellow was the smaller font, you kind of lost it because it was the lighter color and the smaller font. Design-wise, it just didn't work near as well as doing the lighter font with the bigger font, the lighter color with the bigger font. Does that make sense? So I chose to do the sweet and the bee in yellow. And again, this is just a part of design that you just have to figure out and play with. And that's why I always have extra cookies in my set, because there are times where I have so much planned in my head, but I go to do the cookie design and it just doesn't work on the cookie. For some reason, it just doesn't translate from my head or from Procreate onto the cookie with icing. So I always make extra cookies. Do I make a ton of extra cookies? No, but I tend to make one extra cookie per design. What do I do with the extras? Well, honestly, I give several extra to the client. So if they order 2 dozen, then I tend to give 2 or 3 extra cookies. If they order 3 dozen, then I might give them 4 cookies, 3 to 4 cookies. It just depends. And honestly, sometimes I mess up so much in a set that I don't have any extra good looking cookies to give to a client. That's fine. I give a thank you cookie no matter what. And that, I have a video all about my thank you cookie. I can link it up above. But I always try, if I have any good extras, I just give them to the client just as in good practice. I feel like they always appreciate any extras that they can get because they're paying a lot for your cookies. So if you want to give them those freebies, that's fine. If you don't, no big deal. That's totally up to you. But if I have those extra cookies, it takes some pressure off because I know, oh man, I really messed up on this design. I don't want to give, if I have 6 designs and one of the design was just a failure, well, if I have enough of the extras of the other designs to cover not using that design at all, that's what I'm going to do. And I have done that. I have completely nixed a design completely and just given extras of other designs. And the client ended up having what they needed for their order, and they were none the wiser. They didn't know that I had made all these other cookies that I hated. So I really highly recommend doing some extra cookies just in case you mess up, or just in case you miscounted, or just in case you really hate something that you did. Then you don't have to use it and you're not having to go back to the oven and re-bake cookies and start all over again. All that to say, this cookie, I did switch up the fonts just to play with it, just to see what color I liked where, and I ended up going with the yellow and the black as the small font. All right, the last thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna smooth out the last bit of icing here, and we're gonna add our small little bee, and then our set is done. So I put some white icing on the back of my bee. I'm gonna attach it right in between the S and the B to kind of connect them. And that's it. Our Sweet as Can bee themed cookie set is completely done. Actually, hang on, I forgot. I ended up not liking just one bee on this cookie. I thought it looked unbalanced. So I went back and added a second bee at the end of the word sweet. So you'll see that in the final picture in just a second. But I did decide to add a second bee because I felt like the cookie was kind of heavy on one side and it really benefited from a second bee, as you can see here. Okay, friends, that is it for our tutorial of the first Beeday set. I hope that this format was okay and it wasn't too distracting. I hope that you were able to still learn a lot about how to make this set on your own. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.